it seems as if the Vikings, like so many Viking reenactors, have fallen into the same pitfall of drinking before they finish setting up their tents.
They got the frames up.
Yeah.
That's all they need, right?
Also, what are those frames?
I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever...
It's like they started drinking when they made it, too. Like, yeah, we'll just get that one. It's fine. It goes like this. It works. Great. That's fine. Yeah.
Hey YouTube, welcome back to our channel. My name is Elena.
I'm Bjorn.
And this is Vikings React, where we take a look at some of your favorite Viking shows and discuss their historical accuracies.
Day is finally here.
It's the Last Kingdom.
Last Kingdom, Season 4. We're very excited about it. I've been looking forward to this for a really long time. This is a quick, rushed episode because we're really excited to jump into it. We want to get it started as quickly as possible. We've been focusing on it for a while and waiting for this day to come. So we're finally here.
Now, before we jump into things today, we wanted to share some good news with you guys. If you haven't noticed, for those of you who have been following us for a while, we have reached our 100 subscriber mark.
We didn't think this many people would care. And it's been fun. And we just started this as a fun thing. So it's nice that other people have an interest, and way more than I expected.
So thank you guys for being here. We really appreciate you joining us. And we have noticed some of you do have a lot of questions for us in the comments. So in order to celebrate this milestone, we decided that we are going to shoot a special video for you guys answering some of your questions. We're going to do a short Q&A session. You can ask us basically anything, whether it has to do with us, our reenactment, anything about the Viking Age that you've always wanted to know and didn't know where to find the answers. We are here to answer your questions. So if you have questions, leave them in the comments down below, and we will work on getting that out to you guys soon.
Cool.
Let's do it.
Can't wait. Ready?
Yeah.
All right.
Splitting the armies. That was brutal. Wow. All right, we're off.
Good start. Yeah.
Good start. Off to a great start, honestly.
Wow.
I mean, my only commentary is how the Vikings don't seem to own any helmets. Saxons had helmets, but yeah, that was my only comment. So that was.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
It's always a little bit hard to see some of the costuming when it's an action sequence like that, because everything's so fast paced and just all the little cuts and changes that are going on that kind of adds to that chaotic notion of what warfare is basically. It's kind of hard to pick out details here and there. It looks like they're kind of costuming everybody to be these are the Saxons, these are the Danes, because everybody on the Danish side basically had the ginger hair and the blue cloaks and the chainmail and stuff like that. Yeah, there's definitely a discrepancy between how many people had chainmail but yet none had helmets, which we've talked about beforehand, where armor and things like that are helmets and chainmail was more of a rare commodity.
Right.
So it does make sense that not a lot of them would have helmets, or at least metal helmets.
But it seemed like none of them did.
Yeah, it seemed like none of them did whatsoever, and which is also strange because so many of them had chainmail. Oh boy, this is gonna be a lot to unpack.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot for us to talk about.
Yeah,
I can already tell.
Yeah,
but so far so good.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It does look better.
It does already look better. A quick note on that shot of Edinburgh, the point that we made was that in the trailer it didn't look that great, but
yeah,
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot more, and you can see there's like trees in there and everything.
Yeah, it definitely looks. Yeah, it looks way more refined and more like perfected. Also, just quick to note, because I just talked about how there was a difference between the, the people from Bevember and then the Danes. He just said they were Scots, which would have been its own kind of thing. Just a minute on their set designs. Awesome.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Not so much like the chandeliers here. That's more like a Skyrim thing.
Yeah,
with, like,
I've
the-
never understood the candle chandeliers.
Well, if you look at the silhouettes, those aren't candles. I think they're horns.
Oh, I think you might be right.
Right? And
But
that's
there's like candles in them.
yeah, like they're horns filled with wax. Like it's a horn candle. And that's definitely a Skyrim thing. Like I've built so many houses in Skyrim to know what when I see Skyrim, and that's Skyrim for sure. But like everything else though is like really, really nice looking. Like the hardwood like planked timbered framed floors and like the fire pits and just like the simplicity of like the tables and the chairs and things like that even like they have, you can see obviously they have some like little designs here and there where they're like have the carved like top knots, and even that's like there's nothing to really that I know of that can really be have it be based on specifically, but it's still very minimalistic to kind of keep it to that like general style.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is just, it's awesome to see.
And it's only like a few of those chairs. The rest seem to be benches.
Yeah, which is also another great thing.
And I'm seeing like a barrel or two in there.
Yeah, and they had like in the scene before they had like all the ceramic, like the pottery and stuff like that was around him, and it just had like the very simple like kind of banded, cross-hatched and like dotted design work and stuff, like little motifs that were definitely common and like all over the place during the Viking Age, which is really nice. I think in like a typical like longhouse and stuff like that, the seating would actually be benches and rows of table that would kind of go like along the walls, like built into the walls, and they would actually double as like sleeping quarters as well. And then there were a few sections if it was large enough of just like free floating lengths of tables and high seats and stuff for the people of honor, for guests and stuff like that.
Right, exactly.
But just in this one shot, it's like this is just such a great looking aesthetic that they have for this like transition of like day into night and things like that. It's hitting home.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
A little detail, and I'm sure we don't have to stress or talk too much about it because it's a very well known thing. I feel like the Mjolnir that he put on and was wearing. So Mjolnir is the hammer of Thor. It's the symbol of Thor, and it was worn by many a heathen because he was basically the god of the people, and he was the god that everybody kind of went to worship.
Yep. Yeah.
Above the others.
Yeah.
More or less.
Yeah, he was like the most common god. We've talked about that before. So you see his name either in place names or in people's names or just in monuments and attestations like all over Scandinavia. Whereas for other gods like Odin and Frey, you see them kind of in certain areas and certain regions. Thor was widespread everywhere you go.
Yeah. So that Mjolnir basically states his heathenry and belief in Thor and the heathen gods.
Yeah, absolutely. They would use them. They had Mjolnirs and things like that as like charms and tokens of protection and good luck, things like that. It's also believed that there's actually like an influx of them being created in the later Viking Age. So there's actually like a theory that as Christianity started to become more well known and widespread, they actually started to wear Mjolnirs as a sign of their own like traditional faith, basically.
Sort of like the answer to the Christian cross.
Exactly, yeah, kind of like their own answer to it, because with that spread, well, I mean, so beforehand there was no need to mark yourself out as a heathen because that's just what everybody was. It was just part of your life, part of your culture, basically. But as the religious conflict started to kind of come in, you needed a way to kind of promote that older belief, and oftentimes Mjolnir or a cross or something could double as the other. like you see in the Icelandic wolf cross.
Yep.
That one. It's believed it could be...
Get my hair out of it.
Yeah, right. It's kind of believed that it can actually represent a little bit of both. And kind of symbolize the hammer and the cross kind of combined.
Yeah, from a distance it kind of looks like an upside down cross, but really it's kind of a merger of the two.
Either way, it's fine. So there seems to be a little bit more of like a commonplace for the Mjolnirs being worn in the later age as like a sign of, somebody's adherence to their traditional beliefs. With the emergence of Christianity becoming more prevalent and common in the area. But then they were still used, we still have plenty of them dating from beforehand, mostly used for like charms and just like little tokens of like good luck and things like that. So.
Want to give up your gods for your life? Do you want me to show you mercy? No! No, mercy is for Christians. What will you do? Good boy. You capture you do exactly this.
Yeah.
You're blessed.
Come. Girl, I've taken down the camera now.
They're so ginger.
Was that like a Viking well, yeah, first off, yes, they're very ginger. But was that like a Viking version of like hide under your tables, the bombs are dropping?
I think so.
Like, holy
Gotta teach them young when you live in the world like that.
I mean, yeah, I suppose. So we've always had issues with like costuming and things like that here and there, and the last game has been no exception. So far, everything's been pretty decent.
It's been
from,
okay.
From the glimpses and stuff that I've seen. Everything so far has been relatively simplistic. I didn't really get a good look at her outfit, and I'm sure they're going to take liberties with some of the main characters.
Her outfits have been historically
Wild.
some of the worst.
Wild, yeah. But I'm just looking at like the kids and stuff specifically. So it was kind of hard to see like their normal stuff because they had the big cloaks on everything. But even like the cloak was really nice. It was like a little bit like a rougher kind of like nice like twill woven like wool, and it did have like the lion fox fur, which was definitely we talked about it in just our last video.
Yeah.
You often see Vikings be depicted as wearing like these giant fur shawls, basically, and like goat or like sheepskin ponchos, basically, which just makes no sense at all. This is just something that they didn't wear for fashion or utility.
Basically, Jon Snow cloaks.
Yeah, exactly. Like the IKEA sheepskins. But something like this, where it lines like the edges of the cloak, or like on the inside of it as like an inner layer, that was something that we know historically was a thing. There are fragments of archaeological textile finds that we have from Scandinavia. So like the one that he just had with the fox trim was actually very nicely done.
Yeah, that was very accurate.
The knife that she had, however, was not.
Could it be like a Saxon blade of some kind?
I don't think so. It's a little hard to get a look at it. You can actually see it's a stage knife, which is kind of cool. Like you can see like the thickness of it and everything.
Yeah.
But that style, it's like a bronze casted hilt, and has that like slight curve with like the crossguard essentially of like a sword in the knife.
Right.
It's not something that you'd see. That looks more
like Roman or something.
It definitely has that Roman feel. I think it's more of like almost like a Bronze Age like British knife. Because I mean, it definitely has that feel for the Roman side because the Romans were in England.
That's true.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years before the Vikings.
Right.
Absolutely. So you do have a little bit of that Roman influence in England that kind of proceeds throughout. But that definitely looks more, just from what I could tell, of like something like a Bronze Age kind of thing that would have been cast rather than like forged. Definitely doesn't fit the period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit hokey.
Yeah, she's still got that like vest. Yeah, no. He's got like the half sleeve like t-shirt caftan. No.
Yeah. Those aren't the best designs.
No, not gonna happen. And here's like the sheepskins and like the leather armor and stuff. Here it all is.
Yep.
Here's
the stuff that you don't do when making a historical drama.
Nope. That was a nice Mjolnir though.
That was a large one.
Yeah, it was a nice one.
Settlement until the winter. You must hide you away.
I'm noticing a little bit of blend between sort of like the Saxon styles and the Dane styles here. I don't think it was, very pronounced at all in the first couple of seasons, which makes sense because they just landed and were invading. But I feel like as the seasons have gone on, there's been like more and more of a blend of like the dress styles and like the different clothing. The stuff that is more historically accurate, there's been like a little bit more of a blend between like the Danish styles and the Saxon styles, which makes sense because they've been on this land for years now.
Oh yeah.
So obviously there's starting to be like some crossover between the two.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we can actually show. I wouldn't say like accurate, but is like a thing that happened. You know, it's not like historically. It seems weird to say like, oh yeah, historically speaking, they would have shared, you know, clothing styles and things like that. But it's just like it's almost like just a little interesting, like history factoid that you see throughout the world history, like even to the modern day, of like people just seeing like foreign styles and being like, hey, that's cool, I want to try it.
Right.
Or like it becomes like the new summer fashion statement kind of thing.
Exactly. Especially with trade routes everywhere and everything.
Absolutely.
Styles move all over the place.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just an interesting little thing to kind of think about too, just like on a larger scale kind of situation. But also like historically speaking, you know, Viking fashion, Viking clothing did have a pretty influential emergence in Anglo-Saxon society at the time frame, even though they were raiders and they were like attacking places and they were, you know, portrayed as these like pillaging barbarians who were like after your soul basically. Like the young people were like, yeah, but like his shirt though is like pretty cool. I kind of like that. I dig it. Like, I'm gonna try it out a little bit. And like you'll actually like see that like some of like the younger generation, based like the time frame, they started to adapt. Like there was this Danish style of tunic that had like a square neckline, basically. So during these raids and during this like cultural exchange, war.
I'm just gonna call it cultural exchange.
Cultural exchange. You know, it's just the hip way of saying murder.
It's not a raid. It's
not a raid at all. It's just we're just showing our culture. But during that time frame, like their clothing did start to have like an impact on like English fashion. And you see that in other places too, like well before the Viking Age, during kind of like the migration period, and like when Rome was still a thing, like when the Holy Roman Empire still existed in mainland Europe, you actually see that like Gaulish territories had an influence on Roman culture as well. So like there was a fashion in one of the regions in Gaul where they would basically like fashion their hair into like this elaborate knot on like the side of their head. It's like a Subian knot or something, I think it was called. And that started to become more emergent in like the surrounding areas as well. Like young kids would fashion their hair like these other people from like some other culture because it was just like a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
And like they were scolded for it and they were like, don't you dare do that. How dare you try this out? But it still happened. So you'd see it just like emerge everywhere, you know, and the same with the Vikings, how we talked about in the last episode we just put out yesterday. Like the style of the, that like Kloppenrock, burqa, kaftan kind of thing, like the overcoat came from an Eastern influence thing that emerged into the Vikings. But it wasn't like Viking specific. They just kind of adapted that because they liked it as a fashion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, fashions were still a thing even back in those days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the
dress for success.
The girl with the Mjolnir that we noted, that she had a nice Mjolnir on. She also had, I think it was like 3 sets of beads, which is very reminiscent of, you know, something that you would have in a Viking dress, except for she was wearing it more as a necklace.
Yeah.
And the dress itself was a little bit more reminiscent of, you know, Saxon style. I'm not as well versed in English styles as I am in Viking styles, but the dress did seem to allude more to the fact that it was like a little bit more English make. But then she still fashioned that necklace to kind of look like beads that you would wear with a Viking dress.
Yeah, exactly. There's definitely like a blending of the kind of cultural fashions and things going on, which is nice to see. Definitely to be expected after this amount of time of, you know, Danish occupation.
So you can tell that the costume designers have thought about this.
Yeah.
Perhaps we are fated to work together, Lord Arslicker.
Like, that armor looks hokey.
Yeah, that armor's terrible.
I don't know where they got that one from.
That's something that you see in a LARP.
Yeah.
Hey, now, Philip, they can smell you from here. You look like shit. What have you done to my ship? Now that was Arthur's fault. It's time for Wessex to repay all that I've given.
There's so much bad armor in this show so far. It makes me really mad. I just
Flopping back and forth between it.
yeah. I wanted to just like quickly talk
For Wessex to repay.
on his on his sword. Yeah, because I feel like that's such like a iconic thing that everybody looks to and wants to talk about and things like that. His sword is really cool. I dig it, but it's not a Viking sword. They give him a lot of flack for like wearing it on his back because like a back strap for the sword would have been something way later period, which is correct. Typical Viking harness would be like on the hip, like from a shoulder strap, not something that would be suspended from your own like waist belt. Would have been its own like harness and things like that. His is kind of, it has like a longer handle, almost more like hand and a half, which is something you see again more in like the 14th century. When armor becomes more prevalent and widespread and shields become less of a thing. Yeah, a hand and a half sword is specifically something you can wield with a shield, or by itself, because it gives you a little bit of extra length to, grip onto it with both hands and do a thing like that there. And then like the pommel is so iconic for this. Now, it was probably something that's supposed to be more like small and just like inset into the pommel. That was definitely a thing that happened. You'll see like gilded swords with jewels and things that are inset into like the cross guards of the pommel caps and things like that. But this, that big, like, is it amber or something?
I think it's some kind of an amber.
Yeah, it's definitely supposed to be like the actual pommel cap itself. Depending on the period and like the region, the hilts and pommels take different shapes and varieties, and they change throughout the ages. They're adapted and resized and things like that. Sometimes the Viking swords will have a pommel cap, sometimes they won't. Typically that would be used to basically add like a little bit of a weight on the end as like a counterbalance to help balance the weight of the sword itself and make it more proficient, swing and handle better basically. So that's kind of the purpose of it. This would not provide anything for it. Like,
yeah. I mean,
steel and iron weighs far more than like a hunk of amber is going to. And it wouldn't like stay on. Like, you'd have to basically peen it through the amber or like wrap it around. It'd be tricky to say the least.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't like serve the purpose it's supposed to. So technically speaking, like that sword, unless it was really well made and everything like that, which I'm sure it was, it would be kind of like a wonky feel to it. But like historically, like that's not how they would have like inset the gems and precious stones and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to keep in mind, if I'm recalling correctly, in the books, he had the blacksmith that made his sword in the books was a Viking. It was when he was with Ragnar after he was already taken by them.
Gotcha.
So it would have had to have been a Viking style sword, a Danish style of sword.
Yeah, and in the show, he kind of just like met a dude while he was in hiding, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And he was still a Saxon, right? The blacksmith he went to?
I can't remember, honestly.
I can't either.
I think
it was a while ago.
I don't think they ever specified.
Yeah, it wasn't somebody he like knew. It was
Yeah.
just somebody he like met and like took a chance on.
Yeah, in the books, it's a blacksmith that as a kid he helps out and he's kind of like his apprentice for a little while.
Cool.
To just kind of make himself useful. And this is just such an iconic sword to the show. Obviously, whoever sees this sword nowadays, it's Uhtred's sword.
Yeah.
It is such an icon. Obviously, they wanted to go and make it look very distinguished, so you don't want it to look exactly like every other Viking sword out there with just a little stone inset into it. So I kind of understand that decision.
Sure, yeah. I mean...
But, just for the purposes of our commentary, we can look at it and say it's not a Viking style sword.
Yeah, they could have at least like made the handle a proper fit and put that end like lower guard on so that they can build the gem into the cross guard or something, or into the pommel cap. They could have done a little bit better.
The knife that he's carrying on his belt, however, I can't remember exactly what it looks like out of its sheath, but from this angle at least it looks like it's a one-sided blade.
Yep. Yeah, it kind of has that standard kind of like broken back,
Yeah.
like Anglo style to it, and I think that's fine. I'll have to take a look at the handle and the pommel and things like that.
Yeah, when we do see it.
Yeah, actually something I just noticed, the bardings for the horse. That's a really cool touch that I just noticed like 13 seconds ago.
Oh yeah, I wasn't even looking at that.
Yeah, so like a big thing in grave finds were horse sacrifices, because they were like a sign of nobility, and a huge thing in pagan rites, pagan bloats and sacrifices and ceremonies, and also people needed horses either to do agricultural work in the afterlife, because actually horses were used primarily for like plows and agricultural work in the Viking Age over like cattle and oxen, and also as like transportation. And so you see a fair amount in like these higher status graves, like bardings and like bridles and stirrups and things like that. And just from this, actually, it fits the same style and fashion that you'll actually see the Viking graves have with the bardings, with those like inset, precious metal kind of
Like
across
decorations.
decoration.
And stuff,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's actually a really nice touch that I didn't even notice until like we just got going with this. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a cool thing
That
to
does look really
see.
good.
Nice details.
They keep a record of building fortifications. See, this one tells us how 20 men can fashion a palisade in under a day. It is all for our own protection. Please.
That was some detailed IKEA drawings right there.
It was. Part A goes into part B.
Well done. That's all. I just wanted to make a stupid comment. They didn't have blueprints like that. No, thank you.
If we want all this to continue, then we must not overplay our hand. Do you want to return to being landless and ridiculed? You bump him then, if you do not believe me.
I tried. He did not bite.
And he believed you?
Wants to kiss his master's backside, he believes. What he wants to hear.
Then we shall attack Mercia while their backs are turned. We sail to the estuary before dawn, head upstream, and keep the boats apart to avoid any scouts.
It's a beautiful sword he has.
Yeah. I wasn't looking at it, to be completely honest. I couldn't look while he was like spinning it in the dirt.
It looks really good.
Cool.
I caught a couple of glimpses.
I just wanted to pause to make another snippy comment. It seems as if the Vikings, like so many Viking reenactors, have fallen into the same pitfall of drinking before they finish setting up their tents.
I noticed that. They got the frames up.
Yeah.
That's all they need, right?
Also, what are those frames?
I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever...
It's like they started drinking when they made it, too. Like, yeah, we'll just give that one. It's fine. It goes like this. It works great. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never actually seen that style of framing, so I'm willing to say that it just wanted to be fancy with it.
Yeah, it just like looks like an interpretation on a Viking tent. Like, it's
Yeah.
not...
I can see how it would, like, make it so that you have, like, taller walls and then the roof is a little bit above your head as opposed to the tents that we have where you, like, walk in and you have to, like, squat down.
Yeah, so like the general like size of it, like the shape of it, just creates it so that it kind of bows out.
Yeah.
So it's more rounded, so you have a little bit more like open space.
Yeah.
But that said, it's not like an accurate thing based on the frame styles and things like that we do have. You could make it certainly historically if you just cut down like a wonky shaped tree, just one that has that arch in it. Then you could make one like that, sure. So it's plausible. It's just not something that's like a style that was like used
Yeah.
necessarily.
It's nothing that we've ever found.
Yeah.
Just-
Yeah. And again, it still follows that same general style. So it's like, it's not like a replica, it's an interpretation, which is something you see often in, Viking reenactment and things like that. So again, I just wanted to always point things out and just be a little bit nitpicky here and there of like, it's nothing that we found that came out of the ground from the Viking Age per se, but like you can see with just like a little bit of like a different route, they could still get to the same thing with the same stuff.
Right.
Yeah. The one behind it looks more of like a permanent structure that's just not finished at all. Like that's kind of like how it would be built, and then like on top of that they'd throw like the thatching or like the turf and stuff like that. So that's kind of like the frame that they would use to build like an actual longhouse essentially. But again, they started drinking first, so
And didn't finish.
they didn't finish. We'll get to it tomorrow. It's fine before the public gets here.
The shield that's sitting out in front of that initial tent, it just kind of like reminds me of the way that we throw it right in front of the tents.
This is my tent. I'll get to it. This is my. I need a drink. I just drove 4 hours. This.
That's basically all I can think of looking at that.
Yep. The extras are definitely reenactors for sure.
You look like a man with good news.
I am. And we will need to sit for it, and we will need wine.
Way ahead of
It's
you.
indeed worth waiting for.
Look at that swagger.
Son of a.
Sitting on your backside.
Perhaps my father's my name. I take Northumbria and I unite the four kingdoms.
Small matter of conquering East Anglia, but that is mainly cattle and people that look like cattle.
Your father here could be done. One country, one king.
Turn it into hacks over and paper pipes along the way.
Said no one ever.
It's just like, thanks. Cross.
Like laundry hanging up to dry. They have like furs, like for pelts and everything drying as well.
Yep.
It's just a really cool setting.
It is unwise to remain somewhere you are not wanted.
And yet you choose to stay here too. Perhaps we're not so different.
She's not very well liked.
Dude, all the things that he's wanted to say for decades, it's just spewing out of his mouth. I love it.
Impressive beast. I did not realize how much you had grown.
Try to cook him with us, and time we will find you a proper horse.
There's such a typical father. I didn't realize you'd be bigger.
It's so stupid.
You mean they grow? No one told me they grew.
I have a gift for you. Bring in the horse. And it just like,
Now I see where the error was made.
my bad.
It looks a little too large for the boat. That's a strong start, I'd say.
Yeah, very strong start.
That's
That's
a
awesome.
very good start to the show. I'm
Yep.
excited for the season.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm pissed we have to watch it like once a week. Like, I just want to binge it all right now. I dig a lot.
Yeah.
It's gonna be great.
I'm excited.
A lot of good points. A lot of good stuff in it.
Yeah, generally as you pointed out before, like the set design has always been good on the show, and it seems to have stayed pretty consistently good.
Yeah, really
throughout
quality
this whole thing.
locations.
Clothing is kind of a hit or miss. Sometimes you see something that makes sense, other times it doesn't.
Yeah, like the villagers and like the peasants always look the best.
Yeah, well,
really.
they're probably like extras that are just
and they're just like, oh well, here, like throw on this like one thing, and it's like, okay, yeah, no, that's all you need. That's all that they'd wear. And it's like, oh well, you're a character, so we'll lump all this bullshit on top of you. No.
I don't have any like major complaints about it.
Yeah, no, there's always like the little things here and there that are pretty standard for any kind of show, which is, better to get them all out early on so we can focus on the rest of everything. But everything seems great so far.
Yeah.
Pretty standard to their quality that they've always presented.
Yeah, and the characters are staying consistent too, where they always have this portrayal of Christians as the men, specifically, especially, where they take the Christian doctrine, but behind closed doors, they're beating their wives and sleeping with mistresses and scheming their schemes. This show has always had a portrayal of them that way, and that's pretty true, to what was going on back in that age.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily that like things didn't necessarily make them a worse Christian and stuff like that, because like at the time frame, like at least for the example of like beating your wife and shit like that, like that's horrible. But like at the time, like that's just what happened. Like that's what society like had in store.
Yeah.
Like
the show does, and the books as well do a really good job of just capturing the essence of what it meant to be a Dane in the age, but also what it meant to be a Christian back in the age.
yeah, absolutely.
It seems like this season is going to be about Uhtred getting Bebbanburg back, which is going to be fantastic to see. I'm excited.
Or like defending Bember. Like he could get it back like 2 or 3 episodes in, and then just have to defend it from like Mercia.
That's true. You want to start off with the ratings?
I'll start off by like starting at like a 7. So like they've always been really consistent with their portrayals, with their editing, like with the setting. They've always had those same pitfalls, like we mentioned with the clothing and like the little inaccuracies here and there. But like I feel like the mood and the tone and like the atmosphere that they create is so much more genuine, and it's just really like true to form, which I really dig so much. Like it just has that kind of like Norse Dane, like 9th century, like gritty feel to it, which I really like. So we'll start at like a 7.
Nice.
Yeah. High. We'll start high.
I would agree with that. I was going to say 7 for mine as well, for the same reasons, essentially. Yeah. The small pitfalls are there, of course.
Which is why it's not like a 10.
Yeah, but
there's always detractors.
Yeah, but all things considered, like this show stays pretty true to the books, I believe. I've only read the first book, so I can't really know at this point if it's true to the books or not.
I mean, I'm assuming. I've heard it's better about it, but it still kind of takes its own
here and there
liberties and all kinds of shit.
But even then, the books are such a good source material and are so true to form that even if they do, deviate from storyline perspective, they're still probably putting in some things that the books have written into them.
Yeah.
About, how the Danes would be acting, how the Saxons would be acting, the general mood and the storyline of the whole thing, I think stays pretty consistent. So, yeah, I would agree. I would say starting off with a 7.
Hell yeah.
Just a couple of points down, but, I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified of our future videos. And we'll see you in the next one. And leave us questions.
Oh yeah, and leave questions for the thing.